Hi, my name is Michael Adinolfi, and I'm doing a presentation on freedom of speech in the United States, and this is my audience. This is Anne-Marie, my girlfriend, Laura, my sister, my father, and my cameraman, Rob. Congress shall make no law respecting an establishment of religion or prohibiting the free exercise thereof, or abridging the freedom of speech or of the press, or the right of the people peaceably to assemble and to petition the government for a redress of grievances. This segment from the Bill of Rights seen here, taken from Cornell.edu, identifies what it means to be an American. Hearing these words evokes a memory or a moment in most of our lives when we realized how truly lucky we all are to be born American. For instance, think about the history of great oppressions imposed upon some of the masses of the world. From the times of Moses, where slavery of the Jews by a monarch tyrant, to the British occupation of the Americas in the 1700s, citizens of many great nations and creeds have fought for freedom of speech and the ability to be heard, that most citizens of the United States born into these luxuries take for granted today. I say luxuries because not every nation has this great fortune. Think about more recent times. A segment from the movie Hotel Rwanda, documenting the ethnic cleansing still problematic and horrifying in Africa, Paul Rusesabagina, seen here, pleads with his fellow citizens to reach out to people outside of his oppressed country. There will be no rescue, no intervention for us. We can only save ourselves. Many of you know influential people abroad. You must call these people. You must tell them what will happen to us. Say goodbye, but when you say goodbye, say it as if you are reaching through the phone and holding their hand. Let them know that if they let go of that hand, you will die. We must shame them into sending help. This is a sad reality that most of us won't ever have to endure because of the establishment of our rights of freedom of speech and the Constitution that our founding fathers fought for so long ago. Freedom of speech in the United States has been exercised since the establishment of the Declaration of Independence and the impending rebellion against the British occupants at the time and distant governing body. Over time, though the idea of freedom of speech hasn't changed, the interpretation into law, specifically freedom of expression, and the methods of communication of this freedom have evolved and expanded greatly, with the explosion of mass media through televised broadcasts to social networking through the internet. The United States, compared to the world, may be the youngest nation in establishment of civilization, but one of the most mature in democracy and freedom of speech since the British occupation. Over the past few centuries, many court cases stemming from freedom of speech attempt to interpret this right into law. Furthermore, technology has greatly affected the ways freedom of speech have been exercised. To understand where we are in such a relatively advanced time in the life of our nation, exploration of the history of freedom of speech must be examined. The development of freedom of speech in the United States is a focal point in American history that is not to be overlooked. Beginning in the times of British occupancy of the Americas in the late 1700s, the colonies at the time desired freedom from a foreign government. Legislators and colonists sought to govern themselves as the British government imposed hefty taxes from afar. Taxation without representation would no longer be tolerated as the colonies rebelled, provoking the American Revolutionary War. Without this rebellion, would the idea of freedom of speech have ever come about? Through the establishment of the U.S. Constitution, the American government derived what are now most commonly known as the Bill of Rights, the first 10 amendments of the U.S. Constitution. The First Amendment details what freedom of speech is and the various facets it extends to, including freedom of the press, freedom to assemble, to petition, to peaceful protest, and by extension, through various different court cases of the past few centuries, freedom of expression. Many court cases exist that interpret freedom of speech for what it was and was not intended to entail. In Schenck versus United States in 1919, a conviction for Charles Schenck was upheld during an appeals process for distributing leaflets that vehemently opposed the draft. The United States government interpreted that freedom of speech could be limited when the words themselves incite danger or create a panic of sorts. In the past, this has been compared to shouting fire in a building where there isn't a fire. In 1957, Roth versus United States prevented the mailing of obscene materials and advertising, stating that obscenity is not within the area of constitutionally protected freedom of speech. The docket goes on to also say that in the light of history, it is apparent that the unconditional phrasing of the First Amendment was not intended to protect every utterance. Texas v. Johnson in 1989 was a critical interpretation of the freedom of speech in that it extended to freedom of expression. The courts ruled that laws obstructing the burning of the American flag for protest was unconstitutional and violated basic First Amendment rights. The explosion of the technological age has created many outlets for different interpretations for freedom of speech and have thus provoked many complications and controversies in recent history. The development of social networking via the internet through Facebook, Twitter, YouTube, Instagram, and a great number of other services have expanded the ways in which we enact our freedom of speech. Protesters can post text and videos on personal pages, blogs, and public forums at an alarmingly quick rate that could potentially reach anywhere in the world. Excuse me. Some claim that there is no privacy anymore because of the exponential rate of growth of technology. Some would debate that free speech has gone too far and has been misstepped upon. For instance, in the case of Edward Snowden, a former system administrator for the CIA that divulged vast quantities of classified data, the United States government holds Snowden accountable for treason for the release of classified documents. However, the Russian government is granting Snowden political asylum for the time being. These documents were leaked on a radical website, WikiLeaks, publishing an assortment of controversial documents that some could deem too far and could prove to be deemed unconstitutional. While the accused could just as easily make a claim that speaking out is for the greater good, similarly to the court case Schenck versus United States, creation of a panic is not supported, among other treasonous statements. Throughout history, freedom of speech has been exercised in many ways. The American colonies fought to establish it, court cases legislated to uphold and interpret it, and technology has only further driven it to be communicated much more rapidly throughout the 20th and 21st centuries, for better or for worse, legally or unconstitutionally. To conclude, quoting one of our great founding fathers, George Washington, seen here, if the freedom of speech is taken away, then dumb and silent we may be led like sheep to the slaughter. And this is my audience here. Thank you.